It's Friday, November the 27th, 2020, and welcome to Asia Pacific Today. I'm Mike Ryan. Festival is a fabulous restaurant and bar in New York, but why did they open smack bang in the middle of COVID-19? Festival's owner, Tyler Hollinger, joins us shortly. Just how has Donald Trump changed the world? A new report is out called, wait for it, How Donald Trump Changed the World. We'll hear from its editor, Professor Harsh V Pant, later on in the program. And Kirk Clyatt has the wrap-up on politics from a democratic point of view. Tyler Hollinger is an owner and event producer for New York City's only farm-to-bar cocktail. It's called Festival. He is also the owner and creative director of Highlife Productions, plus he's an actor, comedian and filmmaker. Tyler, first of all, welcome, and you're in my favourite city on the entire planet. How does it feel to be that lucky?
Well, I'm just glad that we're still somebody's favorite city. New York's catching a rough one right now.
Look, Festival, you really opened at probably the worst time imaginable. The food and cocktails on the menu sound delicious and uplifting, but I'm just wondering about, and I understand that you go through a process to open, but when COVID happened, couldn't you have put it back maybe a few months, or did you say, no, we're going to do this, we're going to get through this?
Well, I mean, a lot of these decisions were made well in advance of COVID. We signed the lease like a year ago today. So there were certain legal obligations that were in place with the landlord, with our purveyors, with a lot of different parties where, we had a confidence in not only myself and the people behind us, the people behind the scenes, the talented people who are part of Festival really are the stars of the operation here. I'm just the one driving the ship. Everybody else, from the mixologists to the chefs, to the front of house, to the back of house, to our dishwashers, are really the people who are doing the great work here. And it's a testament because not only has the neighborhood supported us, but New York City has supported us, because this is something true. It's something of value. It's something of substance. We are providing a very high level of food and beverage, not just in the way you would think from a culinary standpoint, but from a health standpoint as well. Everything we serve here is local farmed. It's local sourced. We support local purveyors. People are waving at me on the street. local people who are your local farmers. This is wholesome, organic, fresh, healthy ingredients that we're serving. And healthy stuff is exactly what everybody needs right now. And nobody's talking about that.
What inspired you to do this? Was there a market for this sort of restaurant and bar, or did you, after a few too many cocktails one evening with the wife, think, look, my life is really good right now. I'm going to put a rocket up my backside and make sure that I really live?
Well, the impetus is this. We produce a festival called Secret Summer, and it's a 1,000-person cocktail festival that happens every year in New York City. It's been going on for 7 years now, and every year it's sold out. 1,000 people come. We serve the freshest cocktails on the planet. There's music, art, food, games, dance. It's a whole awesome day of fun, and we've really built quite the following because of that. So we transitioned that model into a brick and mortar that you can have year round whenever you want from a culinary perspective. That's really the impetus behind all of this, and that's really what started everything.
So what's wrong? Let me ask you this. What's wrong with Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Cuomo? They've made it, though, really hard for business, and now you have to shut down at 10 o'clock. For New Yorkers, 10 p.m., well, it's just the start of the evening. So you have this beautiful restaurant. You're riding on the back of this festival. You've called it Festival. You're going to have great cocktails, a bit of New York living at its finest. And then we have the party poopers, Cuomo and de Blasio. But, I mean, what are they on about?
Well, I think the idea is that, they're worried that too much extravagant partying leads to COVID, which I certainly haven't seen that data happen. I don't know why all of this is related to alcohol to begin with. Apparently, de Blasio and Cuomo think alcohol gives you COVID, which that's a crazy bag of nonsense.
After 10 o'clock, COVID and alcohol,
It's insane.
it's like, well, it's
insane
terrible.
too because they're taking these policies and they're blanketing them to all businesses. Don't get me started on gyms. The one place where you go to keep your body healthy, to keep your immune system strong, they're trying to shut down. And what gym is crowded at 10 o'clock? That's insane. Secondly, if you limit the capacity of people to dine at 10 o'clock, then all those people who wanted to come later are just going to come an hour early. So you're putting all those people on top of all the people who are already there during that normal course of the evening, and you've created an even worse crowding situation. So it's even harder for the business owners to keep everyone 6 feet apart, to spread it all out, to keep everybody outside in the middle of winter, which is doubly difficult.
But here's the thing with governments. I mean, Dave Rubin once said, governments are great at coming up with a solution for the problem that they've created in the first place. Now,
do you want to hear something insane? De Blasio was like, "Oh, I got the solution. I'll just let everybody have propane heaters on their restaurant sidewalks." So he signs this legislation, this executive order. I look like a hero. I've solved the problem of winter, except the FDNY doesn't agree with it. So in New York City, to have a propane heater, it has to be 10 feet from the building, and it has to be 5 feet from the building and 10 feet from the street. Well, the sidewalks are only 12 feet wide.
Look, New York's a city of amazing communities, block by block by block. Did de Blasio and Cuomo think by creating fear and panic, New Yorkers would start to dob in their neighbours in by calling 311, which is the I'm going to dob in on you line?
I don't know. Originally 311 was like if you see a crime happening or if there's a homeless issue, or if there's like a safety issue, like something's hanging from a scaffolding, call 311. Now it's become the tattletale line, and anyone who has a problem with any other New Yorker calls 311. So individuals can call 311 on businesses, and then the government will show up. And it's really funny because they come on a regular basis here, like every day, just because people don't like Tucker Carlson or people don't like me.
Or they like your cocktails, though. Maybe they like the cocktails.
Maybe they do. And then they come, they show up, and I talk to the government agents, and I say, okay, who complained? Because I want to file a complaint on them. And they go, oh, well, it doesn't work that way. And I go, well, don't you see the hypocrisy in that?
Do they care?
No, they don't care. They don't care.
In your neighborhood,
they're just, the people who show up are just people who are just doing what they're told to do. And frankly, that's the worst part of everything, that nobody stands up and says this is wrong.
Do you think that's the end game here, is that governments now have worked out a way of getting you to do what they want you to do?
I'm not going to speculate on hypotheses. I just think that people are in love with power more than they're in love with love. And if you accept love, if you love your neighbor, if you respect your fellow person, you don't have this gigantic power grab.
In your neighborhood, how many restaurants or bars have just gone?
75%.
Wow.
It's bleak.
Will they come back? Will they come back? Do you think they'll ever come back?
No, they won't.
Wow. We've heard much about the devastating impact of restrictions on New York restaurants and businesses. What about visitors? Are they coming back to the city, or are they just petrified? We're not going near the Big Apple for a while. The Big Apple has a worm at the moment.
I don't know. It's interesting because we get visitors from everywhere, and people come here. We're very busy here. We're lucky. We're so fortunate to be so busy here. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's difficult to even get a table at Festival during those dates because everyone appreciates so much what we're doing. And I think we're really starting to reach people.
As someone who lives and works in New York, tell us about how the city feels at the moment.
I don't know a single person who approves of what de Blasio and Cuomo are doing. I speak to a lot of people every day in the cafe. I'm here 9 a.m. till 11 p.m. and I speak to a lot of people. Nobody is happy with what the government is doing. So I don't understand how the government is able to keep getting away with this.
What about in speaking of governments in Victoria? The Victorian government, as I mentioned before, they locked down the city, and it was locked down for about, Melbourne was locked down for about, all up about 5 months. But the guy that's running it, which is Dan Andrews, his popularity is about 70%. I mean, maybe de Blasio is actually thinking, hey, this looks pretty good in Australia. We might try it ourselves.
I don't know. I don't know a single person who really appreciates that they're doing a good job. Everyone I know hates them. It's a mystery to me.
Is this the same feeling throughout New York or your neighbourhood, or is it just some of us radicals?
No, I think that we're the majority feel this way. Like, I don't know a single person. I haven't spoken to a single person who's like, Cuomo and de Blasio are really doing a great job.
They're not. What support is available to your business from?
Zero.
So there's none?
Zero. There's none. There's no support from the state or the government. There's only fines. The first piece of mail I opened when we opened our doors, the very first piece of mail was a tax bill for our liquor license for $865. They're fining businesses in New York City for staff not wearing masks to the tune of $1,500. If we violate the fire department of New York's policy with the propane tanks, they can fine us $15,000.
So then how do you focus on recovery in the future of your business? How do you move forward?
We move forward because we have such a strong community. We have a strong base of individuals who don't care what Cuomo and de Blasio think. They come and support us because we are serving the best cocktails in New York City right now.
Well, they look delicious, but I'm here, I'm like a long way away, so, and I really don't like virtual testing or taste testing, all right? So, no, thank you. But New York, it's got this vibrancy, this life about it. The people are straight down the line, but they're very warm. New Yorkers are very warm. Tell you how it is. Will that ever come back, or is that gone? What's the story?
No, it's still here. It's still here. I mean, New Yorkers do the coolest shit on the planet.
They do.
And I've been to a lot of cities. Paris, very close second. I want to go to Australia soon, very soon. I've never been, but New Yorkers are really fucking cool.
They are.
And we're resilient. We're survivors. This is the city of 9/11. This is the city of, the financial crisis. New Yorkers are survivors.
If you want to come to Australia, let me tell you two things. First of all, Australians don't move their lips when they talk, all right? We just talk. We're like a Jerry G doll, but I wonder where the hand is. The second thing is our margaritas. What do you charge for a margarita? Just need to ask you that. I'll tell you what we charge for our margaritas here. What's a margarita worth?
Well, that's a good question you ask, because not all margaritas are created exactly the same. Our margarita on the winter menu is actually called the Vaccine, and it's a margarita variation on a penicillin, which is a classic drink with lemon, honey, and ginger.
Oh.
And so we have a lemon, honey, ginger margarita with sesame washed verde mezcal, Casa Dragones Blanco, and turmeric.
Wow.
So it's a $15 margarita, but with any good vaccine, multiple testing is required.
But see, your margarita is a bit too fancy for me. I mean, the standard margarita, a bit of the triple sec and some ice and tequila and squirt of lime. Here, that thing in a fancy glass, by the way, a fancy glass. In Australia, you're looking at about $22.
Wow.
So your $15 for all the fancy bits.
$15.
It's just it's sounding stunning. My lips are getting dry thinking about it. Look, where do you see the future for New York? Do you think you'll get out of it soon?
Yeah, absolutely. I see this wrapping up very soon. A lot of cities in America are going through a second sort of lockdown phase. The vaccine that they've come out with has a 90%, effective rate, which is exceptional. It's amazing, and I really think that's going to be happening very soon, maybe the first of the year.
Yeah, or January 20 when Donald is.
Just go outside and help somebody needs.
Yep, it's an amazing city. Your politics are amazing. Who knows what's going to happen in the next few months or few weeks or few minutes? Anything might happen, but New York will never, ever change. It's a city that just doesn't sleep. What do they say? The city with no pity.
City with no pity. I like that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Professor Harsh V Pant is Director and Head of the Strategic Studies Program at the Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi. He holds a joint appointment with the Department of Defence Studies and King's India Institute as Professor of International Relations at King's College, London. He is also a non-resident fellow with the Wadhwani Chair in US-India Policy Studies at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. Professor Pant has been a visiting fellow at the Centre for the Advanced Study of India, University of Pennsylvania, a visiting scholar at the Centre for International Peace and Security Studies, McGill University, and an Emerging Leaders Fellow at the Australia-India Institute at the University of Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Professor Pant's current research is focused on Asian security issues. Professor Pant writes regularly for various Indian and international media outlets, including the Japan Times, the Wall Street Journal, the National in the UAE, the Hindustan Times and the Telegraph. Professor Pant, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike.
You recently edited a report called How Donald Trump Changed the World. Now, that's a great title. What were some of the foreign policy issues examined?
Well, we looked at a range of issues because clearly, as American elections and the results also tell us that while Mr. Trump might be gone now or for a while at least, we really have not seen the end of what is called or is being described as Trumpism. The elections were relatively more close, were closer than we expected, many expected. And I think the ideas that he has brought forth in some ways will linger on. And what we looked at were both domain-specific issues, like, for example, what he has done to the multilateral order, what he has done to debates on global governance, as well as what he has done in his specific geographies. And I think we found that in a lot of the cases, perhaps his rhetoric and his administration's approach did not quite match. And in some of the cases, what we will find going forward that Mr. Biden, despite his having a very, very different world vision, would find it difficult to reverse what Mr. Trump has done. So I think, for example, if you look at the Indo-Pacific, where I think you and I both are very interested, we are located. The idea that Mr. Trump and the Trump administration is an extremely isolationist one would be very difficult to sustain. He managed, or he pushed, a very, very aggressive or an assertive Indo-Pacific vision. It was not simply related to China, although it was partly related to the so-called conflict with China that has been emerging, but also in terms of his outreach to other countries. Countries like Australia, Japan, India, ASEAN. I think it was an outreach that for the regional states made sense given China's rise. So I think he, despite his idea of despite the idea that he would be reverting back, he was looking inwards, which he was in several cases. In the case of Indo-Pacific, in particular, we found that he was more engaged with the region and there was and it was welcomed in the region compared to what, say, Mr. Obama was doing. So I think we have to look at Mr. Trump's legacy in terms of in terms of more gradation, in terms of more nuance, than perhaps just saying that Mr. Trump was all about America first.
Was Donald Trump as disruptive as he was accused of when becoming president?
So I think, like all American presidents, Mike, his legacy would be when we look back, we would find that it's a mixed bag. I think in the question of disruption in particular, my sense would be that on the multilateral issues, perhaps we would see his disruption more vividly, more explicitly than say his predecessors, given that he was very unequivocal in terms of taking America out of certain multilateral frameworks, like the Paris Accord, for example, or he said things or demanded things from allies and partners which previous American presidents, and I think Mr. Biden himself would in the future, say more diplomatically or behind closed doors. For example, the whole debate on NATO, the idea of burden sharing, that NATO members should be doing more for regional security, for NATO's resilience. Those ideas have been in the public domain for a very long time. We are hearing these debates. We have been hearing these debates right from the time of George W. Bush, and this has been a point of tension between Europe and America. But Mr. Trump was saying it much more publicly. He was willing to risk relations with closest allies on these questions. Similarly, with Japan and with South Korea in Asia, he was also willing to be very explicit, demanding more, that Japan does more or South Korea does more. And I think this idea that other countries should pitch in has been growing in the American establishment, and has been there part of the discourse. But Mr. Trump said it much more undiplomatically, perhaps, and very explicitly. So I think the challenge for future administrations would be to reverse course, or to rebuild ties which have been frayed with closest allies. But I would very much doubt if they would give up on issues which have been part of American foreign policy establishment for a very long time now. So yes, in certain areas, he seemed more disruptive than other presidents because he was willing to go an extra mile and challenge some of the long-held foundations of American foreign policy. But in others, as I was discussing in answer to the first question, for example, in the Indo-Pacific, he seemed more of a traditional American president trying to restore American preeminence in the Indo-Pacific. So I think there are, again, gradations here, and there are, again, nuances here that one needs to look at when assessing Mr. Trump and his disruptive legacy.
What do you think are Donald Trump's greatest achievements on the foreign policy front?
I think without any doubt, Mike, I would say, reorientation of the China question perhaps will be his most important contribution and his most lasting legacy. I think he virtually single-handedly changed the discourse on China in the West in particular. I think a lot of the countries like yours and mine that have been living in China's vicinity now, and have been experiencing a certain kind of an aggression and assertiveness from China. There have been these debates both, in Australia, in India, in Japan, even in certain ASEAN member states, about what China is up to in the region. But I think in the West, and we have seen this attempt to make a case, or to suggest that somehow engaging with China is the only option, and it would lead to the kind of outcomes perhaps that they were hoping for, which are more productive. And I think Mr. Trump, from the very beginning, challenged the very basis of that assumption, arguing that China has not only benefited more from these engagements, that this is not only a bilateral, this is not only this lacks the bilateral relationship between America and China lacks reciprocity, but he also challenged China on other issues like trade and technology in ways that perhaps have never been done before. So, and by the time he's leaving office now, it's very clear that the entire consensus in Washington and the consensus in Western capitals in the West, in Europe, has completely changed. Today, there is a much greater cognizance of the challenge that China poses, and there is a realization that unless China is confronted head on today, perhaps there'll be no tomorrow. So I think that assessment is very important, and Mr. Trump played a very important part in building that consensus because he was challenging China frontally, without any guard, without any mincing any words. And I think it did two things. It sort of reassured a lot of the Indo-Pacific countries with all the other challenges that perhaps America understood finally the challenge that is emerging. But it also generated in Washington, in Western capitals, a reassessment, a fundamental recalibration of their China policies. And I think that is going to be perhaps his lasting legacy, even if he does not, come back to power as even as he does not come back to politics as he's suggesting by 2024.
Look, we're running out of time, but just quickly, Professor, what do you expect with the Biden administration rescuing Obama's legacy or the great global reset favoured by wealthy globalists and bureaucrats?
I think Mr. Biden will certainly try to resurrect what he perhaps rightly feels that some of the legacy issues of Mr. Obama were discarded by Mr. Trump, and he would try to restore his own vision of a collaborative, consensus-based world order. But I think the challenge that he would face is that even when the time when he was the vice president, say 4 years back, and today, the global order, the global questions have completely changed. And Mr. Trump, whatever he has done in the last few years has also contributed to that. And in some ways, it would be very difficult to restore a status quo ante. And therefore, I don't think he can go back to those to that era of Obama, seamlessly, because there are two things. One, as I said, the world has changed. Two, America has changed. The America that Mr. Biden would be leading is again today very, very polarized. The questions about America first are not going to go away. He himself has said that he would first prioritize American middle classes, American manufacturing, American industry. So clearly, the idea that somehow he is going to be the kind of a free trader that the high noon of Clintonian internationalism, that's not going to happen. He will find it very difficult to restore the status quo ante, which he has promised, partly because a lot of things have happened in between. So even something like JCPOA, like the Iranian nuclear deal, for example, which Mr. Trump junked, I'm not so sure how easy it would be for Mr. Biden to restore it. Partly because, in some ways, the challenge for him would be that Middle East itself has undergone a dramatic transformation. The Middle East today, where Israel and Saudi Arabia seem to be contemplating a normalization, is a very different Middle East of Mr. Obama. And so for Mr. Biden, who has again said that he would work with allies and partners, how he manages these contradictions would remain a very important part of his legacy. And therefore, it may not be very, very easy for him to go back to that status quo ante. But certainly the direction of his engagement with the world, as he put it, would be about restoring, which he feels that America has lost the edge, and he would try to situate America right at the center of global debates, discussions, multilateral order. And I think a large part of the world would welcome that, because we need a leadership at a time from America where leadership seems to be in short supply. But whether he's able to do that on a sustainable basis, given the challenges that Mr. Biden faces both at home and abroad, again remains to be seen. But I think he has already indicated that some of the appointments that he has made are more in the traditional mold, perhaps indicating his desire to make American foreign policy less unpredictable and more in tune with some of the long-term fundamentals of American foreign policy thinking.
Undoubtedly, a few exciting weeks coming up still, because we don't know whether Trump will end up still being president. Depends on the courts, of course, and a toss of a coin almost. Who knows, Professor, what will happen? It certainly makes good reading, and appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, it's the Thanksgiving Day long weekend in the US, and we give thanks to Kirk for joining us today.
Yes.
After a big ham lunch, and
That's right.
and still wearing that horrible mask.
It's delightful. And you know what? I have my doggy Ted here, who is a senior citizen rescue dog. So we really don't know how old he is. He's like totally deaf now. But I'm having him here just to remind you and all our viewers that, yes, in just days now, 50. Okay, hang down. You got to go see the Joe Biden dogs at the White House? Yes, you're going to make it till then? Because, yes, dogs will soon be back at the White House. But people say, how is it that Donald Trump doesn't have a pet? Oh, but Mike, he does. It's Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina. Yes, he walks him on the dolly, sure. God only knows what Lady G does.
You know, you're raising the ire of our producer.
Why is that, Mike?
Because, and in fact, you're raising, where's my false outrage? You're raising the ire of the host here. I mean, Donald has got a pet. He has.
Yeah, who?
On his head. It's his hairpiece.
Lindsey Graham. I don't know how many viewers know who Lindsey Graham is.
He's great.
He's this.
I like
Yeah,
Lindsey
right.
Graham. I like, he's wonderful.
Lindsey Graham, watch my lips. Listen to my words. Remind me, if there's a Supreme Court nomination after the primaries have started, we will not hold a hearing on who's on the Supreme Court and what ruling did we have. We had her vote, Amy Coney Barrett's vote, reverse the vote of the now departed Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the Supreme Court has now ruled that, hey, no problem, religious institutions. You know, we have a church here, no kidding, that classifies as a church here in Las Vegas. Penn Teller of Penn and Gillette, Penn and Teller fame, is Penn. That's not his name. Penn, yes, it is Penn Gillette.
Where are you?
These guys so
Makes
confused.
sense.
I'm having a little tryptophan coma after eating so much. You have to excuse me. But Penn of Penn and Teller actually has been involved with this organization. It's called the Church of Bacon. And the reason it's here in Las Vegas, it's an accredited church. And the reason it's called the Church of Bacon is because bacon is real. And you can believe in bacon. But now I lost my train of thought. We might have to start the whole show over.
No, we don't. You know what? But here's the thing. The Church of Bacon,
Yeah.
you think they were just hamming it up?
Oh, that's very good. Oh, now I know what I was talking about here. Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court ruled that you could have as many people to your religious services as you want. So they could have had, now based on the Supreme Court ruling, 10,000 people go to the T-Mobile Center and they'd be serving them lots of bacon, and there's nothing the government could do about it. So here you got religious organizations suing the government so they can bring people to super spreader events. It's kind of crazy, but that's where we are. And the fact is, Trump will, even though here, Thanksgiving Day, when we're videoing this, he's in the White House saying, massive fraud. I clearly won. I mean, this guy just won't let up. And you say, well, a lot of his supporters believe him. Look at his record. He claimed massive fraud when he didn't win an Emmy in 2005, when Ted Cruz beat him in the Iowa primary back in early part. I would have been February of 2016. Oh, massive fraud. This guy, I mean, it's going to be a wild ride. And of course, you had the pardon there of Michael Flynn, who not once, twice said, I'm guilty. I lied to the FBI about my dealings with Russia. Now he is pardoned. So who knows how many more are going to benefit from Trump's pardon pen before this is over, including perhaps his former campaign manager, Paul Manafort. So there are more to come. This is going to be a wild 50 days or so that we have. And Trump has now alluded that he'll leave the White House if the Electoral College confers the presidency on Joe Biden, and that would happen on December the 14th. All certification issues should be done by December the 8th, my birthday.
By the way, we need to acknowledge This segment of Asia Pacific Today is sponsored by Joe
Yes.
Biden and Kamala Harris. And I just thought I would mention that bit. But and I see again, I've let the monster out of the bag there. Look at it, he's very excited about Joe Biden and Kamala. Now, Joe Biden may have the shortest presidency on record because he'll end up suffering back pain because, of course, the knives will be out to remove him, to install the very left agenda. And look, I mean, to back that up, back to the future with Washington, they're returning to the Obama days with their favorites, the insider deal making, and we mustn't forget the fawning press.
Well, we shall see. One thing's for sure, Ms. Harris, the vice president.
Is it Kamala or Kamala?
It's comma, like you use a comma in a sentence, comma and la. So Kamala. And what she did, she had a great, I'm going to send you the video so you might be able to insert it here. You have Kamala Harris. She knows how to cook. For her mic check for a show on MSNBC this week, she gave her recipe for cooking that holiday turkey. And I mean, I love her personality and the fact that I agree with her on many issues. You know, it's funny because you mentioned these things, Mike, but a lot on the left, they think they're not that big of fans of the vice president-elect because of her work when she was prosecutor in in Oakland, I believe, one of those North Bay cities. She's from Oakland, so I think it was Oakland. But then she became the attorney general. So some of her easy for me to say on Thanksgiving, prosecutorial temperament and the fact, see, I got it out, prosecutorial temperament.
Say that three times.
Prosecutorial. There you go. See, thanks. And then she went on to become, of course, California's attorney general before being elected to the Senate in 2016 because it was too harsh. They say that she was too harsh on criminals and didn't cut them enough of a deal. So it's really funny because the left is very intense, and there are a lot of folks on the extreme left that aren't that happy about things that are going on because there is a centrist cabinet that's been put in place. And a lot of people are saying, oh, my gosh, it's going to be so boring. And then people are like, yeah, that's what we want. You know, even me, I'm ready for waking up and not seeing what Donald Trump has tweeted. And, you know, I'm sure it's changed a little by the time you see this. But I was just scrolling through his Twitter feed. It's just crazy. And I don't understand. I still really have a difficult time understanding how people can be comfortable and confident going to bed with their pets and their children at night, realizing that Donald Trump is president, and that I have a real hard time. And I think this is something that sociologists will have to study going forward. Still, how in the world this man got so many votes, although he's now claiming that, you know, there's no way Biden got 80 million votes. And I think the important thing that needs to be remembered here when you have Trump claiming all this fraud and disingenuous activity taking place, if it was a rigged election, oh boy, did the Democrats do a terrible job at it. Speaking of Lady G, Lindsey Graham, the senior senator from South Carolina.
Love him.
By the way,
great. He's great.
Yeah, right. He took Strom Thurmond's place. And Strom Thurmond, there's a lot of bad things you could say about him. But
His
at least
name,
he had
first of all.
Strom, yeah, Strom. But at least the guy had gravitas. I mean, I met him a couple of times. I met him when I was a young man in the 70s. And then I met him again about 20 years later in the 90s. And I want to know what he was doing because he did not age at all between the 70s and the 90s. He looked the same way at 75 as he did at 95, and he stayed in the Senate until he was over 100 years old. It basically became his nursing home, and there are a lot of senators that are that or getting close to that. You've got Chuck Grassley from Iowa, who's 87 years old now.
But you've got also Joe Biden. He's up there with him.
Oh my gosh, Joe did you send him a birthday card? His birthday was November 20th.
He forgot.
He turned 78 years old.
He forgot.
No, but I think, Joe, it's going to be a situation where he is the man in charge, but he has people not tell him, like Trump, what he wants to hear. He'll have people that tell him what he needs to hear to make the appropriate decisions. I think he's got a great staff already. Tony Bilkin, who has appointed to be Secretary of State, had an amazing tale the other day about his stepfather, who was a Holocaust survivor, talking about what he said when the American tank came to liberate him, when he was liberated from the concentration camp. So it's really a touching story. You can tell that this is somebody that cares about people, not just America, but people around the world. So there's going to be a whole new tone and tenor in the State Department. I think that's going to be the case for a lot of administrations. And, you know, hey, 78, that's the new 65. Joe's going to be okay. I am not worried. I watched part of his Thanksgiving address to the nation yesterday.
He runs like the Thunderbirds. Have you seen him run? Like, it's like the Thunderbirds. Thunderbirds go. But in Joe's case, what's the Thunderbirds? Who am I? I'm Joe. Joe.
Yeah. The Thunderbirds, by the way, are based here in Las Vegas. They're the U.S. Air Force demonstration.
Yeah, but these are different Thunderbirds. So these are these puppets.
I'm not familiar. I'm familiar with the Thunderbirds that fly high in the sky over our house here in fabulous Las Vegas, but not the other.
Look, I was just, as I scratch my nose on camera, I was just actually scratching my nose.
Problem.
All class acting.
But I don't know where I am some days.
Some days. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I mean, because you're talking about Joe Biden and being making the right decision because he gets the right information.
But I have this dog that is all wet.
Yeah.
Look at that dog, all wet, coming up to get me. Go away, dog. That's a nice dog, but she's like a mess.
Look, I was saying something quite pertinent here, Kirk, and I've been disturbed.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've been kicked out, moved sideways because of a dog.
Yeah, right. Go ahead.
A very nice dog. But I was just thinking about Joe Biden, and he's going to make the right decisions because he'll be given the right advice.
Right.
Look, as you were saying that, I just realised that the Church of Bacon must be down the road from where we broadcast, because as you were saying that, talking about Joe Biden making the right decision because he has the right information, I saw these pigs fly by, and I thought, wow, I'm just intrigued.
Miracles happen every day. But look at Wall Street. Donald, man, he did not waste a beat. He did not waste a beat getting out there with the Dow. That was kind of funny. When the Dow crossed 30,000. Oh, I did this. We've had this record 94 times or something in my administration. And that must have been the shortest amount of time he'd been out in the Brady briefing room at the White House. I think he was on stage on the dais for about 1 minute and 6 seconds, and of course didn't take questions. Finally, though, taking those questions today and says he'll leave, but it's just a continual undermining of faith in the electoral system. And you know what you got to remember? I was talking earlier, we got sidetracked, which happens to be sometimes. But if he's going to claim that this was a disingenuous, that this was a fraudulent election, then that means the down ballot candidates are illegitimately elected too. People like Mitch McConnell, we mentioned Lindsey Graham a number of times, John Cornyn, the senator in Texas, Joni Ernst in Iowa, Susan Collins in Maine, all those folks that were reelected. But were they really? Was it an election fraud? The Democratic congressman from Salt Lake City, a rare Democrat in Utah, he was defeated in a very close race. Now, is that fraud? We have a race in Iowa, in the 2nd Congressional District in Iowa, where the Republican right now is leading by 39 votes, 39 out of about 400,000 cast.
Wow.
So if you're going to believe Donald's claim, is that fraud? Is that fraud? What's going on?
Only in 4 states, and we know the states. They've got history. But look, that's another story. I think though, all this will be put to bed.
Losing my light in the wind. Losing my light in the wind. Hold on. I got to put a weight. You go ahead and talk. I will try to.
No. You be the grip on set. There he is.
Yes. I don't have any weight. Here, hold on. I got to put some weight on it. We'll take one of our deflated pool floats from the summer.
Pool floats. They call those other names.
It's a shark. It's a giant shark. And we put it on the light stand.
Yeah.
Because
we just love this sort of broadcasting.
I actually cracked a light last time. I don't know where I'll get the new bulb from, but it lasted a long time. I'm good with it. The things I do.
This is the new show for home show. It's called Politics and Home Show. And what it means is that we talk politics and then we wreck the furniture. Is that right?
No, we have Santa. It's a beautiful. Isn't this beautiful?
We should do the next show. We need to do the next show.
Gosh, it's so windy.
We need to. It's the skipper too, and but we need. As my head's looking at the producer here, going, "What? WTF?" We need to do the next show as we wind this up because you're about to get blown away by Hurricane Nyc. We need to do the next show, please. We need to do the next show. 5 times I've said that, from the front, where that decorations are with the red door.
Yes, and I've said you. We'll show them now. Show them what our front door looks like, Mike. You've got the picture.
Okay. All right. Look, that's his front door.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that true?
That's. You see what Kirk does in his spare time? He makes baskets. He weaves baskets other days, and he puts up Christmas decorations.
Well, you might have seen Skype my I don't know, rate my Skype room.
Yes,
they rate people's looks. We have gotten, with 2 set changes before, we've gotten 10 out of 10 from rate my Skype room. So we'll try another one with this.
We'll do the next one from the front. We'll do it from the front gate.
All right, we have, that would be interesting.
That would be. Look, exciting times. I think the next week, the next week and a half, we have all these lawsuits happening. Probably a week and a half.
Trump's record is 1-38 now in court. It's just amazing. He's trying to stop the certification of the votes in Pennsylvania. And here's what the governor there, Tom Wolf, said about these efforts. They got a co-conspirator, a Commonwealth Court judge, which is a fairly low-level judge in Pennsylvania, named is Patricia McCollum, to try to block the certification. She's going to have a hearing. Maybe by the time you see this, it'll be on Friday, our time. Here's what the governor in Pennsylvania said. Since the birth of our nation nearly 250 years ago, no court has ever issued an order purporting to interfere with a state's ascertainment of its presidential election until today. That's what they said. And the state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, the state Supreme Court, will certainly allow that certification to go forward. So the bottom line, whether Trump likes it or not, it's a flip of what we had in 2016. Exactly the same numbers, except for the Democrats. Joe Biden 306. Donald Trump, let's play the world's tiniest violin for Donald. Donald 232.
Look,
I hope Joe and Kamala will autograph one of these for Donald. He can put it up in his
Kamala
office
may
down
be
there in
able
Florida.
to. Joe, he may not know how to, but that's another story about Joe. You've got to see the TV series Thunderbirds from the 1960s.
Ted, I know they talk crazy talk. You have to be quiet just for a minute.
Yes,
From the 1960s.
Look,
yes.
we'll wind this up. I'm just being showed up by the dogs. Kirk Clyatt and the dogs from Las Vegas, from Information City. Thank you very much.
That's right. And hey, I'd love to have you. If you made it this far, thank you. You're I don't know what you are. You're Ted, I know we're about done.
Bye-bye.
You're a glutton for punishment. But if you want even more, if this wasn't enough for you, follow me on Twitter. Ted does. Ted follows me on Twitter. It's at Clyatt, Clyatt, just my last name, at Clyatt. Love to have you aboard. Ted, it's okay, babe. Ted. I know, Mike Ryan, he's just got to bark at him after a while.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Kirk. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, Mike.
Well, that's it for Asia Pacific Today, Friday, November 27, 2020. Have a great weekend in the US. Have a great Thanksgiving Day long weekend. I'm Mike Ryan.